Are the Montreal Canadiens about to make the most calculated or most catastrophic gamble of their rebuild by trading defensive depth for offensive firepower? With the March 6 trade deadline looming like a ticking time bomb, Kent Hughes finds himself in a position that's equal parts enviable and terrifying, possessing assets that half the league covets while desperately needing to inject scoring punch into a lineup that's been about as consistent as a broken metronome. Let's cut through the noise and address the elephant in the Bell Center. The Canadiens are sitting on a defensive gold mine. But here's where it gets spicy. Lyle Richardson from the Hockey News dropped a truth bomb that should have every Habs fan simultaneously excited and terrified, given the Canadiens' recent trade history. It wouldn't be surprising if they peddle another blue liner to add a forward. Another blue liner. That word carries weight, doesn't it? It's a reminder that Montreal has already been down this road, shipping out defensive assets in their quest to reshape this roster. The question isn't whether they'll do it again, it's who gets the one-way ticket out of Montreal. Richardson adds a critical caveat that should make Hughes pause before hitting send on any trade proposal. However, a dire dearth of available talent in the trade market suggests the March 6th trade deadline might be their best opportunity to do so. Translation? The cupboard is bare right now, but it might get stocked as sellers emerge closer to the deadline. Patience could be a virtue, or it could mean missing out entirely. The Canadiens' defensive depth chart reads like a prospect evaluator's dream journal. From established pieces to high-ceiling youngsters, Montreal has options. But options mean decisions, and decisions mean someone's getting their heart broken, whether the player getting shipped out or a fan base watching a future star blossom elsewhere. Before we dive into who's available, let's establish who absolutely, positively, unequivocally is not going anywhere: Kaiden Guhle. Despite reports of teams calling and asking, and you better believe they're asking, the Canadiens have drawn a line in the snow-covered Montreal streets. Guhle just inked a 5-year deal worth $5.5 million annually, and for good reason. This kid brings a combination of mobility and physical intimidation that's rarer than a Maple Leafs playoff series victory. He's the type of defenseman who can skate you out of trouble in the first period and then introduce an opposing forward's face to the boards in the third. That's not tradable. That's foundational. Marco D'Amico of RG.org confirmed what insiders have been whispering. Guhle is off limits. But here's where the plot thickens. If Montreal is serious about acquiring a legitimate top-six forward, they're going to have to offer something substantial. And that's where the real intrigue begins. According to D'Amico's reporting, if Kent Hughes pulls the trigger on a defenseman for forward swap, the candidates are clear: Arber Xhekaj, Jaden Struble, or Adam Engstrom. Each brings something different to the table, and each represents a different level of risk for Montreal. Xhekaj, affectionately known as the Sheriff, has become a cult hero in Montreal faster than you can say old-time hockey. At 6 feet 4 inches and 238 pounds, he's the kind of physical presence that makes opposing forwards think twice about cutting through the middle of the ice. But here's the brutal reality. Physicality alone doesn't win championships in today's NHL. His offensive upside remains limited, and while his toughness is appreciated, it's also somewhat redundant on a team that's trying to build through skill and speed. If a contending team values that sandpaper element and is willing to part with a scoring forward, Xhekaj could be the sacrificial lamb. Trade value assessment, medium-high. Contenders love adding toughness for playoff runs, and Xhekaj's affordable contract makes him attractive. Struble represents the modern NHL defenseman. Mobile, smart, capable of moving the puck efficiently. He's not going to wow you with highlight reel hits or booming slap shots, but he's also not going to be the reason you lose games. He's solid, reliable, and exactly the type of player who could thrive in a more defined role on a playoff team. The challenge? He's also the type of player the Canadiens might regret trading in 2 years when they need reliable depth. Struble isn't flashy, but he's functional, and functionality wins games in April and May. Trade value assessment, medium. He's a useful piece, but not the centerpiece that lands you a game-breaking forward. Engstrom is the highest risk, highest reward option of the trio. Still developing. He represents pure potential, the kind that makes scouts salivate and GMs nervous. Trading him means betting that the forward you acquire will outperform whatever Engstrom becomes. That's a dangerous game. But here's the counter-argument. Rebuilding teams don't have the luxury of waiting for every prospect to develop. Sometimes you need to cash in potential for production. If a team is willing to overpay for Engstrom's upside, Hughes might have to seriously consider it. Trade value assessment. High potential, but unproven. The right team might overpay. D'Amico's report includes an intriguing footnote. Alexander Carrier could become available once David Reinbacher arrives from injury. This is where Hughes' chess game gets really interesting. Carrier is a proven NHL defenseman who can eat minutes and contribute on both ends of the ice. He's not a star, but he's exactly the type of player that playoff teams covet. Experienced, reliable, and capable of sliding into a second or third pairing without missing a beat. The timing here is crucial. Reinbacher, Montreal's 5th overall pick in 2023, is working his way back from injury. Once he's ready to contribute at the NHL level, Carrier becomes somewhat expendable. That's not a knock on Carrier. It's just roster mathematics. You can only dress 6 defensemen, and younger, cheaper options with higher ceilings take priority in a rebuild. Strategic consideration. Trading Carrier makes sense if and only if Reinbacher is truly ready. Rushing a prospect to facilitate a trade is how rebuilds go sideways. Now we get the fun part. Who exactly are the Canadiens trying to acquire? The rumor mill has been working overtime, and several names keep surfacing. Ryan O'Reilly and Nazem Kadri represent the veteran, proven commodity route. Both are former Stanley Cup champions who know what it takes to win when the stakes are highest. Both can play center, which addresses Montreal's most glaring need, a legitimate second-line pivot who can take pressure off Nick Suzuki. O'Reilly brings defensive responsibility and face-off dominance. He's the type of player who makes everyone around him better, without necessarily lighting up the score sheet. Kadri offers more offensive upside but comes with a higher price tag and potentially more attitude than a young team needs. The reality check. Both players are in their mid-30s and on expiring or soon-to-expire contracts. Are they rental pieces for a team that's still a year or two away from legitimate contention? Or are they veteran mentors who can accelerate the development of Montreal's young core? That's the million-dollar question Hughes needs to answer. Here's where things get really interesting. Multiple reports have linked Montreal to Kiefer Sherwood of the Vancouver Canucks. Sherwood isn't a household name, but he's exactly the type of player who becomes invaluable in playoff hockey, high-energy, versatile, capable of playing up and down the lineup, and willing to do the dirty work that doesn't show up on highlight reels. The catch? No team has been given permission to speak directly with Sherwood yet, which means Vancouver is either playing hardball on price or genuinely undecided about moving him. For Montreal, he represents a lower-risk acquisition than the veteran centers, younger, cheaper, and potentially a long-term fit rather than a rental. The strategic fit, Sherwood would add depth, versatility, and compete level, all things Montreal needs. He's not the flashy acquisition that gets fans buzzing, but he's a type of player who helps you win games in February and March. TSN's Darren Dreger recently dropped some insider knowledge that should have every Canadiens fan refreshing their Twitter feed obsessively. I keep looking at Montreal, one of those teams that most definitely is continually kicking tires. That phrase, kicking tires, is GM speak for actively exploring every possible option. Hughes isn't just sitting back waiting for the phone to ring. He's making calls, gauging interest, and trying to find the perfect fit. Dreger specifically wondered about a potential match with the St. Louis Blues and their forward assets. The Blues are teetering on the edge of seller status, and they have pieces that could interest Montreal. The question is whether St. Louis is ready to commit to a teardown or if they'll try to retool on the fly. Here's something that often gets overlooked in trade speculation. Kent Hughes has $3.7 million in cap space to work with. That's not a massive war chest, but it's enough to get creative. More importantly, Montreal has the flexibility to take on salary if it means getting better value in return. Want to dump a bad contract along with a useful player? Montreal might be willing to absorb it if the price is right. Need cap relief to make another move? The Canadiens can facilitate that. This financial flexibility makes Hughes a dangerous negotiator. He has options that other GMs don't. The prospect pool advantage. Beyond cap space, Montreal possesses one of the deepest prospect pools in the NHL. That means Hughes can offer futures without gutting his NHL roster. He can package a defensive prospect with a mid-round pick and suddenly make a deal work that seem impossible on paper. Let's pump the brakes for a moment and consider the downside scenarios because they're very real. Scenario 1. Trading the wrong defenseman. What if Xhekaj becomes a shutdown defender elsewhere? What if Struble develops into a reliable top 4 guy? What if Engstrom becomes a star? Trading defensive prospects is playing with fire. You might keep your hands warm, or you might burn down the house. Scenario 2. Overpaying for a rental, acquiring a veteran on an expiring contract only makes sense if you're genuinely competing for a playoff spot. Montreal has improved, but are they really a playoff team? If they miss the postseason after trading futures for a rental, that's a rebuild setback. Scenario 3. Disrupting chemistry. The Canadiens have built something fragile but real this season, a sense of identity and compete level that wasn't there before. Adding the wrong personality or forcing a player into a role he can't handle could disrupt that chemistry faster than you can say, culture problem. Richardson's observation about the dire dearth of available talent in the current market is crucial. Right now, the pickings are slim. But as we approach March 6th, more teams will fall out of contention, and more players will become available. The patience argument. Wait until the deadline when more options emerge and prices potentially drop as sellers get desperate. The urgency argument. Strike now before competition for available players intensifies and prices skyrocket. Hughes has to thread this needle perfectly. Act too early, and you might overpay or miss out on better options. Wait too long, and you might get shut out entirely or watch prices inflate beyond reason. So where does this leave us? The Canadiens are in a fascinating position. They have assets to trade, needs to fill, and a GM who's proven he's not afraid to make bold moves. But boldness without wisdom is just recklessness wearing a fancy suit. What should Hughes do? Prioritize the second-line center. This is the most glaring need. Without a legitimate 2C, Montreal's offense remains too dependent on Suzuki. Don't mortgage the future for a rental. Unless Montreal is genuinely a playoff team, debatable. Trading significant assets for expiring contract is foolish. Protect the core. Guhle is untouchable, and rightfully so. But Hughes also needs to be careful about creating holes elsewhere while filling one need. Use the prospect pool wisely. Montreal's depth of prospects is an advantage, but only if they're used strategically. Don't throw away futures just to make a move. Be patient but prepared. The best deals often come when you're willing to walk away. Hughes should explore every option, but only pull the trigger when the value is undeniable. The next 2 months will define the trajectory of Montreal's rebuild. Kent Hughes has positioned his team beautifully. Young core in place, prospect pipeline flowing, cap flexibility available. Now comes the hard part, knowing when to push your chips to the center of the table and when to fold. Trading a defenseman for a forward makes sense in theory. Montreal has depth on the blue line and needs help up front. But theory and reality don't always align in the NHL. The wrong trade can set a rebuild back years. The right trade can accelerate a timeline and turn a promising team into a legitimate contender. Hughes has earned the benefit of the doubt with his moves so far. He's been patient, strategic, and willing to make tough decisions. But this deadline will test him like never before. The pressure is mounting, the options are limited, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Will the Canadiens make a splash? Almost certainly. Will it be the right splash? That's the question that will keep Habs fans up at night until March 6th. One thing is certain. The NHL trade market is about to get very interesting, and Montreal is positioned right in the center of the chaos. What do you think the Canadiens should do? Should they go all in on a veteran center like O'Reilly or Kadri? Should they target a younger piece like Sherwood? Or should they stand pat and let the rebuild continue at its current pace? Drop your thoughts and comments below and smash that like button if you want more breaking trade deadline coverage. Stay locked in for more updates as we count down to the March 6th trade deadline. This is going to be a wild ride, and the Canadiens are driving the bus. Let's just hope Kent Hughes knows where he's going.